welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Yes, it is time for us to talk about AEW Dynamite, July the 10th, 2024. A very hot end to a very, very cold show. An awful show, if we're being quite honest, but at least the end, they nailed it. Really good job. Now let's talk about news and notes. First, I believe it was made official by Fightful that Mace and Mansoor will be on AEW. They signed with the company apparently. They were not featured on Dynamite. They were not teased on Dynamite. So you can already tell that if it's official and they haven't made a move, then these guys are not that important to the roster and will likely be shoved into either Ring of Honor or Rampage or Collision or some other lower tier show. They're also expecting to get Ricochet pretty soon, but everybody knew that. Of course, the big news of the day was Stephanie Vaquer, the young lady who wrestled Mercedes Moné at Forbidden Door, being signed to an NXT deal shortly after that match. She was very impressive in that match, and I've seen her wrestle before in CMLL, despite the fact that I don't really like CMLL. I've seen plenty of highlights of her matches, and I've seen her wrestle in New Japan shows, so I'm familiar with her, and I'm not surprised at all that WWE would sign her, especially this new regime, because even though she doesn't speak English that well, that's not really of high importance to them right now. So kudos to everybody who's getting a job these days. Everybody should go get a job. Go get yourself a job. All right? Stop being a bum. Go find gainful employment. Second, Tony Khan was apparently very angry with Conan for calling one of his female wrestlers some chick. This led to a lot of discourse online about AAA perhaps going to work with WWE because WWE is looking for Mexican partnership. And Conan coming out and basically saying that Tony Khan wouldn't give him the talent that he wanted. And this was something that Conan talked about on his podcast, so it's not like breaking news or anything. But the interesting bit is that Tony Khan, who we have been told almost incessantly that he's passive aggressive, and that he's soft, he's kind of weak. I'm supposed to believe that he yelled at Conan because he called a female wrestler some chick. I can believe he might have got upset, but I don't think he really yelled at Conan. I don't believe that one. I don't believe he barked at Conan about it. He might have wanted him to address the female talent a little bit differently. But to Conan's credit, he didn't embarrass the young lady by mentioning who she was on the podcast. He also specifically asked for one female talent and got another one that he had tried to make the most of it. And he was pretty upset about that because he felt like they were partners. If I ask you to use this certain talent, and I think the talent was Ty Mello, and then all of a sudden you tell me, well, I need to use Ty Mello, so I'm going to send you who I want you to use. It's kind of like, that's weird. Don't send me anybody at all. And then at that point, if you're not going to send me who I want, and then you're also not going to, in any way try to make this thing right, like hell, maybe we can get another date or something. I'm pretty sure both of them are kind of pissy at each other. But Conan has always been, how do you say, on the wrong side of Tony again and again, with the way he criticizes the product, the way Disco criticizes the product. And this just seemingly is another one of those long-term things. And I think Conan also kind of bristles at the idea that, Tony Khan now is partners with CMLL, and that cuts into the partnership with AAA because those talents can't be on the same show. So you have a lot of AAA guys who are probably missing out on AEW bookings because, AEW is now using CMLL dudes. So I get it, but, Conan bringing up that kind of stuff it doesn't endear him to the AEW fan base, who probably already dislike him. for his political opinions and different things like that. But he claims that he's still on good terms with Tony Khan and that they texted recently. But I don't know. It's kind of weird that that slipped into the ether. And now everybody thinks that him and Tony are beefing, but apparently not. Tony Khan should be beefing with Warner Brothers Discovery. There was a question that was asked to Tony Khan about at, I think, Sports Grid, I think a podcast that he was on, where he was asked about AEW switching nights, and it basically said it was something he was willing to entertain, and he, of course, gave a really good hand job to Warner Brothers about how smart it was for them to get college football and, you know, still trying to sell AEW as, oh, we get the biggest numbers outside of the NBA on these networks, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we get it. We get that you really like being on TNT and TBS, but you're not a priority, you know. I don't know when the exclusive window closes, but clearly you're not a priority. The other day, he was on Fox Sports Business, I believe. Was it Fox Business or something like that? I think it was Fox Business. And they were claiming that they had 500 million people attended their shows, and it was absurd. It was just an absurd number. That's why I didn't even entertain it. It's like, this obviously like a typo or something. It's so obvious a lie that there's no point in even digging into that, you know? Clearly, it must have been a typo. Okay, so I'm like, it must have been a mistake. They haven't even had 500,000 people show up to one of these events this year, and they've had 110 of them. That would have been, 500,000 would have been, what, 5,000 people per event? Now, maybe they got that, but, you know, what's 500 times 100 is 5,000, right? No, it's actually 50,000. Oh, look at me. I had to add another zero. That's 50 times 100. Okay. Anyway, I can believe that maybe they had 500,000 people, you know, because they did pop a couple of big shows, pay-per-views and stuff. So, but I don't believe at all that they had 500,000 attendance, and I certainly don't believe they had 5 million. That's a pretty big lie to do on national television. But I let it slide because sometimes people make mistakes, and I'm not about to go into that. What isn't a mistake is Tony Khan basically going online, claiming that Dynamite was the #1 show in the 18 to 34 demographic. I don't know if this is a lie or not, but the way he put it is very humble braggy, and it was kind of stupid. So this is what Tony Khan said. This was on Monday, the 8th. Tony Khan tweeted out, per TBS research, as Wednesday Night Dynamite episode 250 approaches, for our first time ever, episode 248 Beach Break was Wednesday's #1 show among viewers aged 18 to 34 on all TV, including network. Then later on, same day, he tweets out, with the AEW plus Warner Bros. Discovery data teams back after the holiday weekend, a fun thing we're researching is last Wednesday, July the 3rd, the first time AEW on TBS TNT has ever been the #1 show on all TV in viewers 18 to 34. Not sure if it's our first, but great stat for AEW Wednesday either way. It's very strange. Just say we were the #1 show. Why do you have to? Why can't you be normal? If you were the #1 show, 18 to 34, you should just say that. Say congratulations or thank you to the people in that demographic for choosing AEW and continue to choose that or whatever. If that's true, I don't know where people get their ratings from anymore since TV by the numbers is gone. So it's not like we can check it. Maybe it is you got to do some data mining to find it. And it is something that Warner Bros. Discovery would know or TBS would know. But to me, it only matters because Tony Khan has been routinely talking about the demos over and over and over again. So to me, if he's saying we're getting even, the audience is getting even younger, we're growing the youngest audience. That's what TBS and TNT kind of want to see. you know? So this is his way of saying to the fans who get demoralized at the ratings going down that, okay, maybe we're losing the older viewers, but we're gaining in the younger viewers, So it's a little cope, but it's also a little bit of, hey, we're getting good numbers here. You want to give us a lot of money, don't you? Isn't that what you want to do? And Warner Bros. Discovery is like, yeah, let us handle this NBA thing first. If that thing never gets done, then this AEW thing never gets done. The final little tidbit we're going to discuss here, and we're going to probably try to wrap up these news and notes. I still got other stuff to discuss. So we just put it in the show somewhere. But this is Medusa, the old hag Medusa. I don't know if I talked about this since I found out about it. But apparently she was invited to one of the training facilities that AEW uses, and the one that Dustin Rhodes runs. And apparently she was asked to train the girls and found that the girls were not interested in training. I mean, she went into this whole thing about going to Dustin and Dustin asking her to train the talent, and she goes to host the class only for, very few of the girls to actually show up. And one of the girls gave her some BS about being on the injured list, despite the fact that the girl was all made up and everything. And, she was kind of offended that, the girls aren't really all that good last time she watched AEW. And she was there to help them, and they wouldn't take advantage of it. They don't take advantage of all of their resources. And it sounds to me like it's the same thing we heard with Billy Gunn, with Jim Ross, with Mark Henry, again and again, with people saying they don't need training, they don't need any help, they don't want to practice, they don't want to do anything, it's all voluntary, and if they don't have to do it, they're not going to. And Dustin was the one who told her that it was voluntary. So she basically took it like the girls just don't care anymore, So I understand. And that sucks to hear. But at the same time, it's the culture. This is the culture of, the new wrestlers and unfortunately the new fans too. The new fans think that, these young wrestlers shouldn't have to take practice classes or whatever. They think stuff like the Performance Center doesn't work. It's stupid. It's this and it's that. They want to break the mold. They want to break the rules without learning why the rules exist. You know what I'm saying? So she was very disappointed. But that story came out like a week or two ago. Maybe I already talked about it. But when you watch some of this, like the stuff that happened on this show, the women's match on this show, Willow versus Mariah May, which was the main event. See how I segued into that? These are two women who actually have some experience. It was okay in terms of it being the finals to the Owen Cup. I'm a big fan of Willow. I kind of figured Mariah May would win because story, and that's what happened. Mariah May wins with a victory roll, actually. I do have one discrepancy with this match before I get to what I actually liked about it. Stokely and Statlander. They interrupted the match and Statlander kicked Willow in the head. That factored not at all into the finish. It was just something that was done. If Statlander would have kicked her in the head and then she got rolled up and pinned and lost the match, that would have been better. Instead, Statlander kicked Willow in the head and Willow was fine to kick out and then was fine for another 40 seconds, 50 seconds doing moves and stuff before she lost to a victory roll. So it's like, why were they even out there if they weren't going to factor into the finish? This is basic psychology, basic storytelling. Anyway, Mariah May wins. It was the right decision. Right person won, even though I prefer Willow. And then after the match, Mariah May absolutely assaults Toni Storm, hits her with the Owen Cup belt, hit Luther with the Owen Cup belt, whipped him with it, and threw him off the stage. And then she started to stab Toni Storm in the head with her shoe. And so there's a bloody Toni Storm just getting beat to a pulp by Mariah May. Mariah May is knocking out referees because women do that now. There's so many women beating up referees. I'm talking about full-grown men. They're going full Black Widow, full Kill Bill, spin kicking men and knocking them out because they can do that. So Mariah May just goes straight vicious heel on Toni Storm. This is what we've been waiting for since this angle began. And great payoff, great timing, very well done. Can't complain. Mariah May versus Toni Storm at All In for the championship. Mariah May should win the belt. Turning Toni babyface is an interesting thing too, because I naturally thought that from the stories that I heard about before this, when the storyline began, was that Toni was supposed to turn heel on Mariah, be paranoid, be jealous of her because she's younger and all that. Even though I don't know if she's younger or not, I don't know. But the idea being that Toni would see Mariah as somebody that was trying to replace her, and then she would attack that in a paranoid rage. But instead, they decided to go the other way, which is Mariah legitimately got Toni to trust her and to take her in, and then she betrays Toni. And I don't mind that. I thought it was very good. It adds another layer to Mariah May. I wish that Mina Shirakawa was still around though, because I think it would have been a little bit stronger if the two of them were together to put Toni as the babyface in the hole even more. Because now she would have to deal with Mariah and Mina as a combination. But ultimately, I really liked this angle. I thought it was great. The other Owen Cup final was an extremely long match between Bryan Danielson and Hangman Page. Danielson won the match with a roll-up. Jeff Jarrett was the special guest enforcer because he was out there because he was friends with Owen. They did a lot. For starters, this match was extremely long. It was like 30 minutes. I think it was at least 20. Danielson was getting beat to a pulp. He continues to sell nerve damage and brain damage, which I thought was against the handbook in AEW, but apparently not. But let's I'm not upset about it. But anyway, the ref bumped, and then Jeff Jarrett comes in. But they told the story with Jeff all night. Jeff, for starters, getting stared at by Hangman while Danielson is outside the ring, beat the shit. The referees are out there, doctors are out there. Jarrett comes to the ringside to see if Danielson's okay. That leads to Jarrett and, Hangman pushing each other. That was fine. But when they started doing Danielson's comeback, he actually used his finish, the Busaiku knee, and didn't even go for a cover. Just hit the big knee. The place blew like, woo. This was a dead crowd. This was a mostly dead crowd. So that was one of the things that got them up when they saw the Busaiku knee, but he didn't even go for a pin. So I thought that was weird. They did a referee bump so that Hangman Page could whip Bryan Danielson with a belt and strangle him. He then put him in a crossface and strangled him. He then started getting into another shoving match with Jarrett. Jarrett took off his shirt to reveal that he's wearing a referee shirt underneath. So now Jarrett's the referee of the match. Hangman continues to go for chokeholds after buckshot lariats couldn't beat Danielson. Jarrett let Danielson get choked out seemingly forever, and people are yelling for Jarrett to ring the bell because Danielson's being choked to death. Instead, he tries to raise the arm and Danielson powers out. He ends up countering the submission hold into a roll-up and wins the match. This match was just egregiously long. Danielson does a good job selling, and since this match could go either way, that was a benefit to it, because they showed you that Hangman was willing to do whatever it takes the previous week when he beat the shit out of Jarrett. So you figured he was going to beat the shit out of Danielson, and he did. The problem with Hangman is that I don't believe him. He can be as vicious and violent as he wants to. I just don't believe he is this guy. He cut a promo in a crazed, deranged rage about, how Swerve broke into his house and stalked his family and people cheered for him. And look, the content of that is fine. It's just, I don't believe that you're really that crazy. I doubt your psychosis, sir. You know, you're not. You don't meet 401 criteria. So you just feel like a guy playing a character. You know, and it's hard to break that once it's been installed in my brain. You feel like you're a guy playing a character. And I just don't buy it. So Danielson winning was the right decision because Danielson versus Swerve was the biggest match you could possibly do, considering you already gave away the Will Ospreay Swerve match. Danielson needs to be the world champion in this company. They absolutely they need it. They need Danielson to win. They need it bad. Okay. So there's that. Danielson wins the Owen Cup. Great for Danielson. The match was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. Again, I don't get into Hangman Page. He's a souped up mid-carder, that's friends with the boys. And he wouldn't even be in this position if he wasn't already friends with the Elite. People would have looked at him and saw that he was mid by this point, Swerve came out to do a light confrontation with Danielson, even though Danielson was all bloody and beat up. Swerve basically said that Danielson has a win over him. He doesn't like that. He's a man that holds grudges, and he still holds a grudge about that. Then says that there are different points of their career. Danielson is on the downslide while he is at his peak, and that he's looking to get that win back. Then he pivots to announcing his candidacy for AEW, Team AEW on the Blood and Guts match. I was like, okay, he's just volunteered to be in the match. I know he's got some issues with the Young Bucks with the whole Christian thing, but that was a while back. That was over a month ago, if I remember correctly. That was over a month ago. Okay, whatever. Team AEW ain't gonna be nothing but a ragtag bunch of baby faces anyway, so it's not much thought need to be put in it. And then Swerve basically says that he's going to prove that he's the best by beating both Bryan Danielson and the Elite in the same year. And then he challenged Okada to a one-on-one match. That ought to be interesting. Swerve still feels like an afterthought. And him being engaged in a friendly feud with Danielson while in a, I wouldn't say friendly feud with the Young Bucks, but it's not like they're in a blood feud either. The Young Bucks did kind of disrespect him, but that was, again, over a month ago. He should be focused on fighting Danielson in front of the biggest crowd ever, right? And Danielson got beat to paste by Hangman, so it is what it is. And because Swerve volunteered to be on Team AEW, Hangman went to the Young Bucks, ran into Okada, who promptly, hello, how can I help you? Anyway, he volunteered to be on the Elite's team. He just wants to get his hands on Swerve. So, okay, sure. I can't complain about that. We started the show with Will Ospreay, though. Will Ospreay cut a really long promo on MJF. A really long promo. I'm going to have to shrink this thing down to manageable parts. Basically, he claims that Daniel Garcia is creeping up on MJF's popularity, which is a goddamn lie. Then said that MJF is one of the most insecure men in the business, so he had to stop that. That latter part might be true, but Daniel Garcia is no way as popular as MJF. He said that MJF blames everything on his mental illness, but he also has a mental illness, so that's no excuse to be a prick, which is exactly what I tell patients in the hospital. He says that the bidding war of 2024 didn't go his way because Tony Khan would rather spend money on people who elevate the company, not those who bury it. But I'm pretty sure MJF makes an obscene amount of money, so I don't know about that. He said he had more talent in his left nut than MJF has in his entire body. I think you would need to have nuts first. He says that he reminds people of what the identity of AEW is all about. It's all about betting on yourself, while MJF only cares about himself. And he says that since he came to AEW, he's been having to clean up behind somebody, and he finally found the guy. It's MJF. He says that MJF is a scumbag, but he's your scumbag. That's the best version of MJF. It's been the same shit for 5 years, but that's the best version of MJF. And he says he wants to show MJF that the level of the devil is the ground floor to him. That last line was cold. Saying that the level of the devil is only the ground floor. That's pretty good. So it wasn't a terrible promo. You know, it was actually solid promo work as he, you know, picked apart the character of MJF, the motivations of MJF, exposed the hypocrisy of MJF. And this was all very good. And it's very well put together. MJF came on the screen, called Will Ospreay the flavor of the month, a dancing monkey, and people will get tired of seeing his flips and then move on to somebody else. It's almost like he knew Ricochet was backstage watching. He said that they'll move on to the next flippy guy and call him the best in the world, which is exactly what they did with Kenny Omega. As soon as he started getting old, Will Ospreay became the best in the world, right? MJF says he's generational. He'll be, you know, the greatest forever and all this stuff. Then he challenged Will Ospreay to an international championship match next week. Not at Wembley, but next week. And Will Ospreay accepted it. So, this is the second match that we thought Will Ospreay might have at Wembley. And this was a big one. And they decided to do this on TV. Okay. Which begs the question, who is either one of these guys going to end up wrestling in August? I mean, it's an interesting situation to be in. So my guess would be that either it's going to have a silly finish in which nobody's going to win, nobody's going to lose. It's going to be like a disqualification or something. And they're probably going to try to make it a triple threat match at All In with Daniel Garcia. Or they're going to switch the titles. They're going to have MJF win that belt. And then MJF is going to defend that belt against Daniel Garcia. But AEW doesn't do, well, they do short title reigns, but not really intentionally. Because it seems like it would be a useful story to have MJF beat Will Ospreay, win that belt, and then lose it to Daniel Garcia. That way Daniel Garcia gets to achieve his dream of being a champion, and he gets to beat MJF at the same time. That would hopefully make him, you know, stronger in the eyes of the fans. It wouldn't really damage MJF at all. And Will Ospreay, you know, what is he holding this belt for? I mean, what does he don't really even need it. Everybody just knows it's kind of like a matter of time before he's world champion anyway. So that could be a way if you want to make Daniel Garcia. Either you have Garcia beat MJF or Garcia beat Ospreay. I would prefer if he beat MJF because MJF is a heel. Well, there is this little slight thing. MJF can make some kind of deal with Don Callis where they work together and screw Will Ospreay, which, you know, could happen. But then you would have to ask the question, which one of, you know, Don Callis' goons would Will Ospreay have to wrestle, because he's beaten all of those guys already, right? So that means it would have to be like a new goon. Are we talking about Ricochet now? Possible. So it's possible that we could talk about Ricochet and Ospreay at All In, which, you know, that fan base would really like. But then it would be MJF and Daniel Garcia. So it's a good problem to have in terms of story, you know, because there's so many different ways you can go. So it's a good problem to have. The Acclaimed put out a really bad rap. They're trying to do diss records. They suck. Let's just move on. Samoa Joe versus Chris Jericho. I can't believe the day has come where these two guys, I can say these two names, Samoa Joe and Chris Jericho, and they are put in an absolute throwaway segment. Samoa Joe versus Chris Jericho sounds like a main event of a pay-per-view. Instead, it's the second match on a dead show. All right? Nobody cared about this match. They were in the ring with obviously toy horseshoes. I mean, there was no metal to be found anywhere around those horseshoes, let alone in them. What a stupid item to use. It's so stupid. I didn't care about this. I couldn't have given a shit less. In any event, the finish though, Jericho and Big Bill, they jump Samoa Joe, put him on a forklift, and then drive the forklift through a wall, which was crazy. The referee just throws the match out because Samoa Joe is dead, apparently. Because a forklift got driven through a wall. I mean, it's over, right? That's it. He's done. You can cancel Christmas, right? Nobody helped Samoa Joe because all of his friends were beat up. So, okay, I don't know where this is going. What's the end game of this? Jericho beating Hook again, or Hook beating Jericho again? Like, where are we going here? There was somebody doing a lot of obnoxious laughing during the final segment of this when Joe went through the wall. But it was just like somebody absolutely cracking up, and I couldn't figure out who it was. But it was very annoying. And I wish they would not do that. They had a fatal four-way match called the Global Glory for the number one contender for the international title. Oops. My bad. I thought they were telling stories here. See, I talked myself into this really cool idea. And nope. Pac versus Tomohiro. What? Versus Kyle. What? Versus Claudio Castagnoli. Pac won the match. He beat what's that kid's name? Fletcher. He beat him. Oh my God. Ew. The guy looks like a Sharpie. Like a highlighter. That's what he looks like. And this match sucked. This sucked hard. I didn't care about this at all. And it was for the number one contendership for the international belt at Wembley, if I remember correct. Now, I don't think they specified it, but Pac won the match and then said that he will not be denied his Wembley moment. So this would assume that Pac is going to wrestle for that title at Wembley, which means MJF can't win that title and defend it against Daniel Garcia, which means what the hell is the point? Are we doing Pac and Will Ospreay? Why? Because they're both from England? Oh, okay. Sure, that's a smart thing to do. You're both from England, so we're going to throw away the story that we've been telling so that two guys from England can wrestle each other in England. Why? Just tell the story you're going to tell. I guarantee you the European fans would care more about the story than they would have cared about two English guys wrestling each other. And plus, you haven't presented Pac that well anyway. You know, he just lost to Danielson. And he only won this match because a bum like Kyle Fletcher was in it. I mean, you're not doing a good job here of making Pac look legitimate. He hasn't won much of anything. Hell, his promo is about how he's made all these promises and fell short. My God in heaven. I don't know when you should do this match, but you should not do it at Wembley. Do Pac versus Ospreay on television. And then you continue with the international title in some manner of story with MJF and Daniel Garcia at Wembley. That's the better way to do this. Get out of this situation as quickly as you possibly can. And because Pac is nobody. He's nothing. Nobody's not going to care if he's not at the show. You can put him on the pre-show. You can put him in the first match if you want to. You apparently have overlooked this guy for 5 years. It's over. We're going to have to move on. All right. So as great as he is, as good as he is, as talented as he is, you have wasted him for 5 years. So it's over. Let's move on and try to make somebody. But if you want to have Ospreay versus Pac at Wembley, okay. But this feels like a TV main event to me. Darby Allin beat up Brandon Cutler as a message to Jack Perry. So apparently that's where we're going with them for Wembley. It's going to be the Battle of the Pillars. Jack Perry versus Darby Allin. That's perfectly fine. Very low mid card. Low stakes. Nothing matters. Put Darby on the Blood and Guts team too so he can get a piece of Jack Perry immediately. Just go do that. That'll be fine. These guys are not the top stars that you thought that they would be. It's unfortunate on your part. Just book them. Call it a day. Next, Mercedes Moné. This is the last segment, if I remember correctly. This was an awful segment. It was stupid and it served no purpose. She comes to the ring. She gets almost no reaction. Virtually no reaction to start. She thanked the Young Bucks for extra security. And then she finally got a reaction by saying she's the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. That got a really good reaction out of the people. That was a good burn. And then right afterwards, they died again. She denied Britt Baker another match because she will beat Britt Baker with worse than she's ever been beaten before. Leave her with something worse than 2 herniated discs and a mini stroke. She's going to leave her for dead. Then she had a toast for herself, but then Britt Baker crashed the party. She was stopped by security, but these are fully grown men. No problem for apparently Captain Marvel, Wonder Woman, Britt Baker, who is batting around 250-pound grown men, beating them up and kicking them to the side. And then she makes her way to the ring, and Mercedes doesn't even run. She kind of toddler walks away. Sometimes toddlers walk on their tippy toes. She tiptoed away, tiptoed quickly, a swift tiptoe away. And it was stupid. It was a stupid segment. It literally doesn't make any sense. And you know what? It ties into what her cult leader / agent has been saying, right? So her cult leader / agent went on to a podcast called The Heel Squad, HEAL. And the things he was saying about AEW is absolutely hilarious. Because this is the time that she was given on the show to build a character and build a storyline, and this is what they came up with. 2 minutes of her out there bombing. I mean, this thing is getting worse by the week. I want Mercedes to succeed. I really do. But this thing is not working. She is too new to not be getting reactions in a place like Calgary, for God's sake. It seems like the smoke and mirrors of WWE made these people seem much bigger than they really are. Because she didn't get nothing out of Calgary until she dropped the Bret Hart line. But this is what the cult leader said. Quote, "Bless this little company that could, which they are a big company. They are the number 2 company. They are so pure and good. It's a lot of time they don't have time to develop stories and characters. We just keep depending on her to go in the ring and do crazier and crazier moves. God bless X-Pac, who is my lifelong. When he came to us, he was not in a good way. Now he's a 2-time Hall of Famer. He's such a wonderful resource because she's the GOAT. She's Mercedes Moné. She doesn't need to be doing all this dangerous and crazy stuff in the ring. It doesn't really pay off with the fans like you think it does. Other people outside of the ring, if you tell a really good story, if you have a good character developed, you don't even care. That's the dessert. When you go in the ring, I'm just scared because there is a talent there right now who has the same amount of followers as Mercedes, had a big wide release feature film made about her, and is kind of not doing that much there now, years later. I can't help what I see could happen." And Fightful, of course, correctly noted that Kevin Undergaro, who is the cult leader / agent for Sasha Banks, is talking about Saraya, who has been in AEW for 3 years. I think they're about 2 or 3 years. She's not doing much of anything. So there's a lot to nitpick about this thing. There's a lot saying that AEW is so pure and good, and saying that they don't have a lot of time to develop stories and characters is because they spend so much time in the ring. Just imagine look, this Mercedes Moné thing, it ain't really working out. But if you think the problem is she doesn't get enough time, if you think that's the problem, look at the amount of time they spent on Danielson and Hangman to tell a simple story that they could have told in 10 to 12 minutes. They decided to take 24 minutes or whatever. It took forever to tell that story. All right. Pac, a fatal 4-way match. I don't understand it. I don't understand that. I don't understand why it exists. Why does it exist? It's not because the company is pure and good they don't have time. It's time management is an issue. They don't use the time properly. Now, apparently this Kevin Undergaro was also the agent for Sean Waltman. I didn't know that, but apparently they're lifelongs, whatever that means. Now, this Undergaro guy is also concerned that they want Mercedes to do dangerous and crazy stuff in the ring. I'm sorry. She's not being asked to jump off any ladders or anything. At least not to my knowledge, she hasn't been. But she's a wrestler and she's done these things before. You think she's never going to be in a cage match or a ladder match ever in her career? These things are inevitable, and wrestling in general is dangerous. So if you're looking at her from the perspective of a commodity, because she's a brand, she's an investment, then yeah, you would be concerned about her jumping off ladders and all that kind of stuff. I get it. You will be concerned that she would end up like Saraya, who got injured in the ring and now can't do much. But that's because Tony Khan doesn't know how to book. He doesn't know how to use anybody. But he did hire Saraya's dumbass brother. I'm sorry, her dumbass, useless brother. I mean, her dumbass, useless, untalented brother. I'm talking about her dumbass, useless, untalented Karrion Kross from Wish brother. Certified bum. And we're back where we started. Please get gainful employment. If that useless sack of crap can find a job, then surely you can find a job. Anybody can find a job anywhere. Don't be a useless bum like Zach Knight, please. I beg of you. In any event, this agent slash cult leader, who is deeply concerned that his beloved Mercedes Moné is going to go out there and get injured again, he needs to chill. Like, where does he come from even mentioning this stuff? It's like they haven't asked her to do anything. She's worked 3 matches, to my knowledge. Maybe 3. She won belts in 2 of them. So she wrestled Willow. She wrestled with Stephanie. And I think those are the only matches she's had so far. Right? And in neither of those matches, she didn't have to climb anything. She just works a style where she jumps off the top rope and jumps through the ropes. That's just her style. She wants to do luchador stuff. So it makes sense that she would, jump off things. But that's just the style she chooses to work. It's not a decision that the company is making. They're not forcing her to do that stuff. But what kind of matches do you want her to have? You want her to pillow fight with everybody? She's going to have to walk around in bubble wrap? You're going to have to chill, bro. You're going to have to back off. You're going to have to back off, cult leader. I'm sorry. Hate to break it to you, brother, but it's over. That's AEW Dynamite. I really only liked Mariah May at the end, but the Ospreay promo was okay. I'm kind of over the MJF Act 2. On Collision, saw him try to blame mental illness for all his behaviors, and I'm just kind of like, ugh. People are not talking about how distasteful that is. For me, as a person who works in mental illness, I don't like the idea of people using mental illness as an excuse for, being an asshole. Because technically, you can manage those behaviors. You can manage that stuff. You're trying to say I got a genetic predisposition or a social predisposition to being an asshole, or you're trying to use it as justification. That don't really work, dog. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I can't do it. Can't let it happen. So I would wish that they would find a different way of doing it, but I'm not offended or anything because I don't have that shit. I don't have no mental problems. None that I'm willing to admit anyway. But it's just weird to hear that these two guys are both talking about, well, I got mental illness and I ain't a prick. Like, you got a different mental illness. Shit. You got a different one. Your behaviors are a little different. Other people's behaviors are, they may have command hallucinations, like Ghostface. Weird enough, I'm just going to ramble now. I just saw a video about Ghostface Killer hearing voices, like during the creation of Only Built for Cuban Links. He was having like command hallucinations to attack people and to, commit suicide and all this kind of stuff. Very dangerous stuff, by the way. And he was still writing songs and doing all this stuff in the middle of psychotic episodes that were being triggered by cannabis use and untreated diabetes. That's very believable, because he would have been young enough for that stuff to happen. And people don't agree with this, but I see it every day. Cannabis use brings about psychosis. It makes you hallucinate. It's literally what it does. And we're talking about back in the 90s, where he would have been in the hood. It took him a long time before he went to find a psychiatrist who was pumping him full of pills and all that kind of stuff. But he basically just had to turn his life around. He had to learn how to manage it. And he had to stop smoking weed. And I tell you, I had this conversation 15, 20 times a day. You look at the list: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, cannabis use disorder. And you're like, fuck, I gotta go tell this guy he can't smoke weed and it's legal in Michigan. And then you go in here, you tell him, hey man, maybe you shouldn't stop smoking weed. But why not, man? It's legal. Like, it's gonna make you see shit. You end up back in the hospital. They don't want to hear that. And so I really want them guys to chill out with the mental illness stuff. About the ADHD and, all this kind of shit, MJF talking about his trauma, the quarters being thrown at him. That's fine. Every villain has to have an origin story. It's usually something that most people don't usually get scarred by, something that most people are not scarred by. And so it makes sense, and that works out fine. But all of these disorders that he claims to have and all this kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, chill out with all that. We don't want people. It's a stigma around all that mental illness stuff, and you're playing into it. I feel like a SJW now, but I just wish they would stop. I'm not gonna campaign on it. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't buy it. It's not a believable story to me, because I know people who have like severe schizophrenia. They've never beat the shit out of somebody with a diamond ring. It just never happens, So, just chill on that. Otherwise, the show was boring as fuck. Why do we need that fatal 4-way match? The Jericho Samoa Joe thing was very depressing, because I like both of those guys, but look at the state of them. Look at their spot on the card. So, here's hoping that the show improves, and I doubt it. I doubt it. But thanks to everybody for stopping by. I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah. We're just gonna